Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of the Amateur Theory Podcast. We got an interesting episode for you today because we're doing something a little bit different. We're taking a break from the movies, and we're just going to be talking about basically all the other forms of media that we listened to this year. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of this. The stuff we're talking about does not necessarily need to have come out this year, but just what we've been, kind of watching or reading. And what we're going to start out with is TV shows. So, we can just we can start with a round robin. If anybody has like an interesting or wants to comment on someone else's, things that they talked about, then feel free to just break into discussion. This is going to be a very loose, very not structured episode.
So, TV shows, my forte.
I can start. So I talked about it on a podcast already, but I'm just going to reiterate. I really, really liked Cobra Kai so much, way more than I thought I would. Because I'm not like I'm not obsessed with Karate Kid or anything, but the show was just so good. And Cobra Kai didn't technically come out this year, but it might as well have because it was a YouTube exclusive, like a YouTube TV exclusive until Netflix bought it this year. And then only reason people know what it is now is because it's on Netflix. But yeah, it was just, good action, good humor, lots of fun drama. That might be my my show of the year, I guess.
I'm not gonna lie, I was very surprised by it. Like when I first saw Cobra Kai, I thought it was just going to be some reboot or some like casual ripoff, like normally what happens.
Yeah, I ignored it for a while.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is going to suck for sure.
Oh, yes. But I was generally surprised. Like, not only does it have like its own like life, it kind of offers a little bit of like a perspective on the other side of things.
Yeah, I like how it makes you look back at the original material and like look at it differently. Like I think it would actually change your perception of the original movie if you see Cobra Kai, because it makes the villain much more relatable, and kind of by looking through things with they do this thing where he gives his side of the story while showing clips of the original movie, and you can kind of see how he's sympathetic in that. Like in the original movie, I guess they get into a fight, and then later the main character like pulls a prank on the villain, and then the villain is like, we hadn't even talked in months, and this guy comes out of nowhere and just like douses me in cold water. Like, for what? He's just out to get me all the time. And it showed him all the times of like the main character just like kind of picking on the antagonist, and then of course he got angry afterwards, so it's not, he's still the villain, I guess. But it does make you look at that in a different light. Like, yeah, it's kind of a dickish move that he pulled over there, like over and over. So it was just very, very interesting.
Well, I have watched nothing. I'm trying to think of a TV show I watched this year. I've been meaning to watch the second season of The Boys, but I just keep putting that off for whatever reason. Did anyone watch that? Did anyone watch the second season?
You know what? I did. You turned me on to The Boys because you told me that the first season.
Yeah, I loved the
first
first
was,
season.
And the second season was also, I think, more of the same. That's not a bad thing. So it's definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it yet.
So, I haven't seen The Boys, but around a similar time, Umbrella Academy came out, and I guess that kind of has a similar. I shouldn't even say it has a similar premise. It doesn't
superhero related,
but it's superhero related. I guess it's a genre. And I watched both seasons over the summer this year, and I have to say it is a flawed show. Like, there were a lot of times, and I was like, I feel like this show is doing something wrong a little bit, but I kept watching. So it's not like bad, and it's not bad. It's just like, I don't know. It feels flawed. And then So we went straight from that really flawed first season to the second season, which was a lot better. The second season was just good television. I wouldn't call that my TV series of the year, though. I'm not a huge TV watcher, but occasionally, if a TV show sounds interesting to me, then I'll go out and pursue it. The Haunting of Bly Manor was more interesting to me than most films. Almost anything. The Haunting of Bly Manor was by far one of the things I wanted to watch the most, and it was not at all what I was expecting, and it was still good. That's a very rare, I feel like, way of describing something. Usually, if you're really excited for something and it is nothing like you were expecting, that's a bad thing. But it's just if you're open to accepting that The Haunting of Bly Manor is not very scary, despite the fact that that's its pedigree, that's where it's coming from. When The Haunting of Hill House is the same show runners with much of the same cast. As long as you're prepared to accept that being scared is not really the important thing of that show, then I think that most anyone will really, really enjoy it. It's good drama.
What do you got, Jake? You watched any shows this year?
So it's going to make me look a little basic, but The Mandalorian.
You know what? I've really been digging the second season.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's great.
Oh, we're already on the second season of that?
Yeah.
I swear it feels like the first season just came out.
I know. But honestly, I really like it. It's it's hard to explain, but lately whenever something new Star Wars comes out, everyone always kind of harps on it or gives it a bad rep. Whether it's a movie or a book or whatever, and they kind of compare it to the older movies, but I don't know how they were able to do it, but this show kind of takes in that old magic, but kind of also brings a new story and a whole new light to the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I'll say that The Mandalorian feels more like classic Star Wars than the sequel movies do, any of them. The one thing I would say about The Mandalorian is that it's very monster of the week. But that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world.
I like that. Well, that's just what classic TV was. Everything now feels like an elongated film. But
yeah, no,
that's just what classic TV was like. So
right, yeah. Every episode is kind of a self-contained. I mean, there's obviously an overarching narrative, but it's secondary to the specific. It's kind of a formulaic show in many ways. Actually, Mando goes to a new place. I need some information. Well, I can give it to you, but you got to help me with this first. Kill some bad guys, kill some stormtroopers. Baby Yoda does something funny, and that's the show. But that being said, it pulls down the aesthetic of Star Wars amazingly, and it has I think that it does all of the elements well. It does the action well. I think Baby Yoda is funny. I think my favorite episode this year was when he kept on eating the eggs. If you know what I'm talking about, Jake.
Oh yes.
So yeah. I think there's a lot to like there.
There is it certainly has an appeal that I feel a lot of the newer Star Wars stuff hasn't really had in a long time. And I don't know if it's the fact that it's in a familiar setting, but with a facet of Star Wars that hasn't really been explored too much, or if it's just the actual form that it takes, where it's kind of not a docuseries, but it's all the other fad TV shows. It's each season is 8 to 10 episodes, hour long each. So I don't know. They definitely did something to make it more appealing. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think my favorite bit about it is the aesthetic. There's a Star Wars aesthetic, but it also has this space cowboy thing, which anything that does space cowboy is automatically kind of cool to me. Cowboy Bebop, Firefly, anyone who gets that kind of it's in space, but it's also a Western and just kind of nails it. I'm instantly into it. And that's what The Mandalorian is. It even has an old Western whistly sound intro.
Like an Ennio Morricone soundtrack.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like that, and so I really like it. I don't know if I'd put it as good as Cobra Kai for myself, but it's still pretty good. Definitely higher budget than Cobra Kai.
Oh, yeah.
Is it as good as Rise of Skywalker? Wait, have you all seen Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
Curious.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually did not hate that movie, but I also went in thinking I would hate it, so.
I think a lot of people did, to be honest.
Skywalker's the third in the trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's the one that came out last year.
I liked it. Like there was multiple moments that made my like eyes roll to the back of my head, but I still kind of loved it anyway. It was like, oh, Palpatine, okay, but it was like, okay, well, it's kind of cool, I guess. Like, well, whatever.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's even kind of cool, but
I still ended up coming out liking that movie. But we're getting off track because this is a not movie podcast. Not today.
All right.
We can't talk about movies. Okay.
All right, we can get into the next subject though, which is video games. And actually want to start this because I know, Jake, you just got Cyberpunk, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's been a lot of news about that, and I'm just curious. First of all, what platform did you get it for? Is this?
So I got it for PS4, not the Pro
console version.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I can actually give you multiple perspectives because not only have I played it, but I also have other friends and other associates who have played it on multiple consoles and platforms. So from my own experience, it's obviously buggy. There are some noticeable bugs. There are some issues with the graphics. I will admit all that. But honestly, I haven't come across anything that's either like game breaking or just like straight up broken. Like It's still a beautiful world. The combat is like honestly intense and very fun. The story is like probably my favorite part about it. I probably finished a story arc like a few days ago that honestly kind of made me a little emotional. So
I got a question. I played Witcher 3 for the first time this year. I bought it for Switch. And like I can appreciate what that game is, but so far it isn't like my kind of game necessarily. Like I'm just like I wasn't that big into Skyrim either, even though like I appreciate everything that it can do.
Braden, what is your kind of game? And you can't say Legend of Zelda.
It's Nintendo games. Because it's Zelda, it's Smash Bros, and it's Mario Kart. Those are my games. And actually, I can talk about my game of the year, which I will later. So I was playing Witcher 3 though. How similar is Cyberpunk to Witcher 3?
So I'm kind of glad you said that, because I do have a few thoughts about that. So it is made by the same developer. Mm-hmm. So to be honest with you, it's the open world part. It is massive, or kind of massive in its own way. Not as massive as Witcher 3, but still kind of big and huge and able to be explored. I think one of the issues with people when they look at Cyberpunk is that when they look at Cyberpunk, they think Witcher 3. And when you play The Witcher 3, you're always playing in third person. Like, you kind of do combos in a way, like, it's kind of more of like an RPG, in a way. Where, like, Cyberpunk's more like, you're always first person, unless you're, like, driving. And even then, you can still be first person. It's more like an RPG / first person shooter. And I think that kind of turns people off because, like I said, they think Witcher 3, and then they play Cyberpunk, and they're like, this isn't really what I was, like, thinking.
That's interesting. And I will say really quick, I don't expect we're going to talk a lot about this game, but my personal game of the year is the remaster of Star Wars Pod Racer for N64. That game I was so into as a kid. They re-released it, changed almost nothing. The graphics are just like up-res. They did not redo the game or anything. It's like it's a port basically of the N64 game. But that's the era of gaming that is closest to my heart. So that I beat the entire thing, beat every race, got all the stuff, played a lot of that game this year. So that would be my game of the year.
I've literally got the original N64 version, literally 10 feet away from, not even 10 feet away from me.
Oh, dude, that game.
Yeah, I have the old like cartridge like somewhere, not here, but like someone in my family has it. Their possession.
All right, what about you guys? Or actually, Jake,
my favorite game's probably sorry?
I was gonna say, I guess I didn't let Jake say his favorite game. I don't know if it is Cyberpunk.
Yeah, it's kind of Cyberpunk.
Okay.
To be honest, like I've played a lot of different games this year. Like I played, I hate saying this, but I played COD for a while. I played Destiny 2 a lot. I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and honestly, like nothing has kind of given me the feels or like the excitement I've gotten from playing Cyberpunk. Like I literally bought it the day it came out, and I have not stopped playing it. Like it's awesome. Like it's definitely my game of the year. I know it has its issues. I know people are upset with it. I know people are working on trying to get it better, but honestly, I still think it's a really good game. And once they do get all the bugs and everything fixed, like it's honestly going to make it that much better.
IGL. Yeah, what were you saying for a favorite game?
Oh, my favorite game I played this year is probably also just a re-release / port of a Persona 4, because they just put that onto the PC. And in terms of JRPGs, like Persona is definitely one of the better ones, because I actually find myself like getting addicted to those games. The problem with Persona, with Persona 4 is I haven't finished it, and I don't know if I will, just because those games are too damn long. I like endings. I don't want to spend like 80 plus hours on a storyline where it's a good story. I like the characters and everything, but it's like, oh, let's go this dungeon. Oh, well, the murderer's not here. Let's go to the other dungeon. Oh, I guess that's not the murderer either. And you do this over and over again for 80 hours, and it can wear a little thin. But during that 30 hours where I'm addicted, it's like the best thing ever. Like I'm forgetting to eat and sleep because I just want to recreate high school life for a Japanese student, I guess. I want to study and raise my stats so I can get a perfect score on the exam.
All right, Adam. Animal Crossing?
No, I found Animal Crossing, like, it wore thin really, really quickly. I enjoyed it most when they kept giving me a thing to do. Like, they're like, oh, you just have to do this. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, I'll keep doing things. And then eventually they were just like, well, make the island pretty. You can do it however you want. And maybe a dog with a guitar will show up one day to play a song. And it's just, I don't know.
I struggle with that too. I'm not get into games without an objective, like Minecraft or like any of those kind of things.
Well, I actually thrive with those kind of games if they go all in on it. Like if it's just like one of those kind of like creative games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, then I can spend a lot of time on that because the whole game is set up to let me do whatever I want, put whatever I want, right? But in Animal Crossing, you have to work to put everything. You have to go collect the resource and then walk over and learn how to craft your thing so it can maybe look like a quaint version of anime scene. So it's like it's just Animal Crossing, not my cup of tea. I've discovered. Actually, it's kind of funny. Regarding your conversation earlier about Skyrim being not your game, that reminded me of when I was playing Fallout New Vegas for the first time, and I thought to myself, oh, I must love this kind of game. Like, this is so much fun. This must be my kind of game. I need to seek more of these out. And I discovered that actually I just like Fallout New Vegas.
Oh, I can personally testify that Fallout New Vegas is quite different than the other Fallout games.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because your conversation reminded me about that. But it's kind of tough. The game that I've probably spent the most amount of time playing, this isn't really fair because this is not my favorite game, but I played a lot of Pokemon because I have friends who play it, and so we go on the max raid battles and stuff like that.
Wait, you guys go on raids in Pokemon now? Did they turn it into WoW?
Wow.
Well, when I say raids, it's more like there's a certain style of game that it kind of tried to emulate this time around. I'm trying to remember exactly what I can't recall the name of this style of gaming, but it's essentially almost kind of a
survival horror.
Yeah, that's definitely where Pokemon took its series this year. No, it's kind of like an arcade-ish style thing where you get a bunch of people together and then you accomplish a goal. It's kind of a weird system.
Like Mario Party.
Yeah, maybe
An
kind
escape
of.
room.
I'm sorry.
I will say, as far as the thing about the game, your favorite game isn't necessarily the game you played the most.
Yeah.
The game I actually played the most this year, I think by a good margin, is Ring Fit Adventure.
Oh.
It was my replacement workout since quarantine closed all the gyms. And I will say, for a workout game, like, this is no Wii Fit. Like, Wii Fit you're not really working out, right? I mean, I hate to say it, all the people who did their workouts on Wii Fit, you weren't really getting much exercise doing that. But Ring Fit Adventure is surprisingly intense on the hardest difficulty levels. Like, it's much, much more, I don't know, involved. And it's actually a game, too. It's not just like and there is a lot of just do 10 push-ups kind of stuff. But but like, there's actually there's even a story. It's a super basic story. There's like a buff bad guy, and you have to outwork him out to defeat him. But I mean, like, it's actually like an RPG. You can level up, and you can get better attacks. There's a little bit of like character customization, where like
I thought you were about to say customer service first.
But anyway, it's I think once gyms open up, I'm not going to be playing it nearly as much as I am now. This really kind of just was nice in quarantine to have, but it's a fairly enjoyable workout. Like it is enough of a game that it kind of makes you forget that you're working out, and that's kind of cool, right? It's kind of like playing sports or something where your mind's not necessarily on the exercise portion, but you're still getting the exercise in, which is so. Props to Ring Fit Adventure.
All right. So my game of the year, it's good that you did that away so I could actually think of it instead of just stating things out. My game of the year is Luigi's Mansion because it's been a very, very long time since I've played just a really involving co-op game where you really gotta co-op together and work together, and it's fun for both people. And Luigi's Mansion is that game. Yeah. So if you have a friend to play with, then I highly recommend it.
Yeah, co-op's just not really a thing anymore, it seems,
right?
In games at least.
It's like,
I guess everything's kind of online now, but I remember like back in like the PS2 GameCube era, I swear, like if you just bought a game, like it would come with like a 2-player mode or a multiplayer mode for like, playing on the couch together.
I don't think consoles even like come with 2 like controllers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's That's why I stick to Nintendo. They're the only ones kind of holding down that fort.
I could never
Local
imagine
multiplayer.
buying another PlayStation controller. Like, why? Kind of like, I mean, you know,
It's literally just for sports games now. Like sports games are the only games left that have local co-op on like Xbox and PlayStation. Otherwise, it's almost non-existent.
And even then, like they've had to like adapt. Like you even have like story modes on like NFL and like soccer games and stuff like that. Like it's just not as big as it used to be.
But all right, on that note, if you're listening, game developers, which you definitely aren't, you know, bring back co-op games. All right, now we're going to get into music. And this is the one where I have the most to say because actually this year I've been listening to a ton of new music. I think more than usual just because I've been at home more. And I like to have kind of background noise all the time. Just kind of the person I am. So, well, normally I'm not listening to, I'll listen to the radio or whatever, but like this year was really a year of like massive music discovery for me. So I've actually broken my my top lists into sections. So we're gonna have a best rock, best hip hop, and best electronic.
It's like your own personal Grammys.
Right. This is the Brayton Grammys right now, real quick. So and I'm gonna do it for both singles and for albums.
Oh Jesus. Okay.
So for best rock single of the year, I'm gonna give it to Kyoto by Phoebe Bridgers. Adam actually introduced me to this song. I'm obsessed with it. I like it reminds me of Neutral Milk Hotel in a really good way. Maybe a little bit more accessible, you know, a little bit more with pop sensibilities, but it's got like the nice kind of indie rock sound, and it's so great. I can't get enough of it. My hip hop song of the year is Run the Jewels. And I know it's not Yankee and the Brave outro. That's how I always type it into Google. What's the name of the final track on Run the Jewels 4?
Last Words Before the Firing Squad, I think.
Last Words Before the Firing Squad. That is my hip hop song of the year. That song is amazing. I do love the outro part. I think that is awesome. But I mean, you know, the main song is really good too. It's also quite amazing. Got these like kind of jazzy horns going on. The lyrics are very, you know, if you know Run the Jewels, they're pretty lyrical, so the lyrics are pretty deep. I think this is like their most political album, Run the Jewels 4, and I really liked it, the whole album, foreshadowing. But I'd say the end track is the strongest song on a strong album. And then for my electronic song of the year, it is Ego Death by T.Y. Dolla $ign, featuring a litany of different artists, including Kanye West, FK Twigs, and Skrillex. This song, the first time I heard it, I thought was this tailor made for me? Like this is what I want in a song. It's really short, but I love it because it has all these, like each feature sounds so distinct and like so for their part of the song, and yet it all flows together so well. It's hard to even describe. It is a shame that the album that this song came from, featuring T.Y. Dolla $ign, was terrible. I had really high hopes for it, but actually there's only 2 good songs in the whole album. That album was super, super boring. But anyway, also special shout out to The Weeknd, Blinding Lights. That'd probably be my pop song of the year. Not one of the categories, but that song was awesome. It's a good throwback, like kind of 80s vibe track. And then for albums, my rock album of the year is going to be post-apocalyptic. I don't remember the full name of the title. It's Bring Me the Horizon's new album. Mm-hmm. I've listened to that so many times, just on repeat. Just I don't know. It's really cool because it's pretty varied. Like the different songs sound very different from each other, but they still kind of all go into this kind of post-apocalyptic theme, which felt very apt at the time, you know, with coronavirus and everything, especially when it came out. There's even one song, Parasite Eve, that directly talks about kind of a pandemic. And also the Yeah, I don't know. There's just a really, it's like one song sounds like a Linkin Park ripoff, but in the best way. Like they bit Linkin Park style, but they did it perfectly, like classic Linkin Park. And then another one is they have I don't know if anyone's familiar with Baby Metal, but they have Baby Metal singing like this like Japanese, but it's coupled with like this like death metal screamo, and it just they don't think like it would work, but it compensates so perfectly. There's so much good things going for this album. So that's my rock album of the year. For hip hop, I already mentioned Run the Jewels 4. That album, the release of it was so, because it came the start of the BLM protests and this album released were kind of coincided. I shouldn't say the start of BLM because it's been going on for years now, but like, when it really blew up, and the lyrics are just so prescient, and then the production is just incredible. That's another album that you can listen to front and back, and it's just there's not a single bad song on it. So prop to Run the Jewels. I've always liked them, but this is, I think, their best work, in my opinion. And then finally, electronic album of the year, I would give it to Miss Anthropocene by Grimes. That album is probably of the three is my least favorite, but still great. There's a lot of great songs on it. It kind of is. It's a very dark electronic-y sound. Maybe even some like metal influences in certain parts. But yeah, it's just that's another really great one. Also very, very varied. There's lots of different sounds in the album, even though they sound kind of collectively together. Also post-apocalyptic themed. So I mean, maybe it's a theme that I liked that this year. But that's the Braden Grammys, I guess. Have you guys listened to any of the stuff that I just mentioned?
Almost all.
Well, I have listened to the Run to the Jewels album twice.
I definitely have, mostly because you've been at my place, and many of these things are now on my YouTube playlist. Like when you were talking about Bring Me the Horizon, like I'm pretty sure you're talking about Teardrop, that one song, the Linkin Park ripoff. That one, when you said that, I was like, I know exactly which song he's talking about.
What about you guys? Any and it doesn't have to have come out this year, but any music that you guys have been listening to?
Yeah, in terms of music that's come out this year, I think I've listened to like 2 albums and like a third of another one. Yeah, the Run the Jewels album is the best thing I've heard that's come out this year, probably. I listened to that Gorillaz album a few times, and I don't know, it's decent. Like I said, I think I've only listened to it twice, so and for me that's not enough times to listen to an album to give like a true judgment. But it's certainly fun though. And yeah, I've become one of those people that just listens to like the same thing they did like from their high school days. Like I just have my favorite albums now and I just listen to those over and over again.
Fair enough.
Oh dear God, it happened.
You're basically where I'm at with video games, where I've been at with video games for forever. Just playing the old stuff. All right, Adam, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this.
I do. I was wondering if I should go last because there'd be so many callbacks to what you said. Okay, I guess I can do some songs, and well, I'll focus on albums actually. So Phoebe Bridgers' album, from which Kyoto is from, is my album of the year. It is just an absolutely beautiful, relatable album, and I think like almost anyone could find something in her lyrics that they can kind of connect back to a memory or something that it's the kind of album that like makes you stop and realize that everyone else is living like full embodied lives and experiencing things that you're experiencing. I don't know. I absolutely love that album. 10 out of 10. It's one of my favorite albums of like the past like 10 years. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it's like my favorite album of at least the past 5 years. Though that said, there are been a couple of other standouts. Run the Jewels 4 is a great album, just really, really good. And let's see, it's an aggressive album, and I feel like, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just not as in tune always with all of the music that's coming out all the time, but it does seem like current trends in music do not tend toward like aggressive sounds as much. So I always get really excited for the Run Jewels because I can kind of get that again. I can get that like feeling again, which a lot of newer music doesn't provide, I guess. So yeah, great album. Fontaine's DC is a post-punk group. Then they came up with their album A Hero's Death, which I have been really enjoying. It's a little bit of it's a little, I would say maybe it's a little slavish to like the post-punk sound with like kind of the droll like voice and like the guitars that are just jangly but also like dark. But you know, it does the job really well. Was a big fan of
the like my kind of thing.
You really should check it out.
I know you said post-punk and like my ears pricked up, so
I suspect you would love this album. No promises, but I think it's right up your alley, dude. And then let's see, other albums I heard. Sufjan Stevens' album was good. Not my favorite of his, but there were some definitely standout moments. Let's see. And gotta give it to Bob Dylan, which his album surprised me. I thought it was really good. I had been hearing a lot of acclaim for the album, so normally I wouldn't pick up the new aging musician album, not because I have anything against like their age or anything, but just because like it's usually not in my mind.
Projects tend to not be as good. I think most of the time.
Sometimes
there's standouts.
Yeah, sometimes
most of the time,
like they've run out of kind of like
irrelevant band, or the band has been
I feel like
30 years.
Bob Dylan's stuff that he's been releasing lately has all been like pretty critically acclaimed. Like
yeah, it's good. It's good stuff though. I hadn't been hearing much of it, but this album is good.
I listened to the first like 4 or 5 tracks and I really liked what I heard.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, and I just didn't finish the rest because I don't know why.
Oh, also shout out to the Freddie Gibbs. The new Freddie Gibbs album is pretty good.
Yep. I listened to the lead single off the Bob Dylan album, the one about JFK. As a Bob Dylan fan, like I love the 60s stuff particularly. I couldn't stand that song. Like I actually hated it. Which doesn't happen very often for me with music. Like it takes a lot for me.
Isn't it like a 20-minute song?
It is like 20 minutes. I did not finish it, but I thought it was super boring. But I mean, each their own. Jake, any standout music?
A couple. So like, I guess like a few people that like have kind of caught my eye this year. One person in particular I was super surprised about, and you guys are probably going to be like, what? Is Post Malone. All right. So, Post Malone.
What came out was that Circles came out this year?
Not this year, I believe, but
I love Post Malone personally.
Yeah, like
I think his albums though, just like
I think his newest one came out like late 2019, but I'm the kind of person who kind of hated him when he first came out, and like for some reason I couldn't stand his music, and then this year I started listening to things like Beer Bongs and Bentley, things from that album, and I was like, okay, I can kind of get on with this, and I kind of like he was kind of like a very long incubation, like incubation period for me to like really get on the Post Malone grind.
Yeah,
so
when it comes to like top 40 pop, Post Malone and The Weeknd for me, like the two ones that I keep on coming back to over and over. I really, really like them both. And they're I guess they're somewhat. Would you call Post Malone R&B? He's kind of like a weird.
It's like it's hard. I wouldn't say R&B. He's definitely more rap, but like I wouldn't say it as like
he's not a rapper though, because he doesn't rap at all. He sings. I mean, he kind of like rap sings. He does like that thing.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't put him as like the general like mainstream stuff that sounds like the same.
He doesn't sound like Future or like Young Thug or any of those people. He's got his own style. He's unique.
Yeah, Future is only unique because nobody can understand what he's saying, but it's my opinion. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that rapper. Another big thing I really liked this year was Motionless in White. I don't know if you guys have heard of him.
Sounds vaguely familiar, but what kind of music?
It's more definitely like more metal, more like you guys were kind of talking about like the post punk, like post like metal, or like more recently metal. They're still kind of like the bigger names in that like in their genre. Like they kind of started off like super heavy when they were younger, and like as they got older, they kind of toned it down a little bit. As a lot of these other people, like if you think about Bring Me to the Horizon, they were super like screamy and like just hardcore when they were younger, and then now like they still kind of have it, but like it's more of like a chilled out mood or like leveled off, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But they're kind of surprising because Motionless in White, like they kind of have like a variety with their songs, kind of like you were talking about with Bring Me to the Horizon, with like their more recent albums. Like each song is kind of a little bit different or has like a different like vibe to it. So I've been really kind of into that a lot lately. And then Brandon, you will definitely know this one, The Midnight.
Yeah. One of those like 80s throwback kind of groups, which I love. Like I like all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, like are they like synthwave or?
Kind of, yeah. They're like retro wave, synth wave a little bit.
But less soundtrack electronic-ish and more like making, like 80s like pop songs, but still with like that kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, music videos are pretty cool.
Yeah, they have cool music videos.
Yeah. But like that's like that was like my summer grind. Like I was, and Brandon can like attest to this because every time he came over, like I would have a midnight song on, and like they even came out with music recently, like the cover of their album was about like it talked about prom and like it was like the inside of like a high school senior's room, and it was all based upon like COVID because like you couldn't really seniors kind of missed their prom and couldn't do any of that. So yeah, their more recent work is kind of based a little bit on what's happening now. So I thought that was kind of cool. It also helped me sleep a little bit because it was like they have very chill vibes.
Oh, talking about chill vibes, I guess I'll just shout out really quick. I'd listened to it this morning for the first time, but Man on the Moon 3 by Kid Cudi is pretty good actually. Oh. If you like Man on the Moon 1 and 2, like his classic albums, this is kind of a return to form for him. Not quite a speeding bullet to heaven. It's he's left that sound behind. But yeah, so if you're like that, again, like it's kind of like a chill, kind of that stoner rap stuff that he's famous for. So it's at least on first listen, I liked it. But okay, I guess moving on, we'll talk about books, and I'm assuming that, or have you? I don't know how much Jake reads. I probably read the least, So I will. I'll start really quick because I just want to do a couple of shout outs. I'm not going to spend too much time. But for the books I've read, my friend actually published a book, so I wanted to give her a shout out. And her published. It's a collection of short stories. It's called Unstable by Marissa Merriman, and they're like spooky stories, like kind of Halloweeny. And so yeah, she's it's cool that like you have a friend you published a book and I was able to get it. It's got a cool cover and good stories. So check her out if you haven't. The other thing that I have been reading that I haven't finished yet, but I'm getting through is this Starting Points, which is a Miyazaki. I wouldn't call it a memoir because it's really a collection of like essays and stuff he's done. But he kind of gives you an inside look into his kind of process of animating. He's a famous director. If you're not familiar with him, he directed Spirited Away. It's probably his most famous movie. But yeah, it's been kind of interesting to read, and I think that was kind of pertinent to this is a movie podcast, and this is kind of a book about movies. So that's it for me. Other than that, I do not read at all. I don't read. I should read more, but I haven't really.
Has anyone read anything that's come out this year, actually? Like a book published in 2020? Oh, wait, I guess, Brayden, you mentioned your friend, but...
But seriously, what's a book?
Wait, Adam, what'd you read?
So I recently decided to kind of dip my feet into like the fantasy genre, like what is the state of fantasy in genre, in like genre writing today. And so one of the big names that kind of comes up if you're dipping your feet in is Brandon Sanderson. He his books are really, really popular. And so I picked up his book, his Mistborn series, really, really liked it. So I decided to take an attempt at his huge volume novels. These things are like a Bible each. It took me during summer when I didn't have like things to do, I would just wake up, read, and keep reading through the night until I fall asleep, and then I'd wake up and I'd keep reading again, and it would still take me a week to like get through one book. But it just so happened that I decided to pick up that series the year that the next book in that series came out. So I read that, and I will stand for this series. It is just mind-boggling world building, like attention to detail, and it always has like a heavy amount of emotional catharsis. So if you're the kind of reader who like wants to feel like these kind of like big like emotional moments because like things really come together or something like that, then this is the novel for you. It seems like it's like tailor-made for that kind of thing. I've read, but Brandon Sanderson is not the only thing I've read. In other genres, in horror, I read The Fisherman by John Langan, which was very creepy, very scary. I really liked it. And it kind of grappled with some kind of interesting ideas. It's very much a eldritch horror kind of novel. But I feel like often when people think of eldritch horror, they think of something like really bombastic, like these like super grotesque elder god kind of things. And this story was a lot more subtle than that, and very unsettling. Let's see. And then inside the realm of science fiction, I read Recursion by Blake Crouch, and that is a very interesting premise that essentially it's basically a time travel novel, but it explores a lot of the implications of what time travel would actually look like if it was put in the real world and this capability was possible. And it was kind of interesting to see kind of perspectives on that. So yeah, busier for reading, and I would recommend all the books that I've listed.
Shit. I have not read anything that's come out this year. I've just not engaged with any of the art and media of 2020. So in terms of literature, I don't know. Well, I don't want to say I just stick to classics, because I certainly don't, but I just tend to stick with stuff that I hear is good. And like a lot of that is classics. Like if something's been out for like 30 or 40 years and people said like, all right, like we can safely say now that this is a good book, I'll just go and read one of those. So I guess in terms of what stood out this year, I read Panine by Nabokov, whose only work I'd read before was Lolita, and that was, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago. But I read Panine, and I loved it so much that I went back out and reread Lolita, and then I read another one of his books, Pale Fire. And I'm going to say that he might be the greatest writer of prose in literature. The man puts words together like Beethoven composes symphonies. Like, it's so witty yet erudite, and like half the time you're looking up words in the dictionary, but it still makes like a lot of sense. It's very, I don't know, it flows in a very, you feel smarter for reading his books. So yeah, he's brilliant. Oh, also this past week, John le Carré died, and I had never read any of his works until a few weeks ago, so that was a strange coincidence.
For those, including myself, who do not know who John le Carré is, what did he write?
His biggest book's probably like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which is the one I read. He wrote like Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. He wrote like spy novels, a lot of them set during the Cold War. But I picked up The Spy Who Came In From the Cold just because I read on the blurb that like Graham Greene said it was the best spy novel ever written. And it was fantastic. Great book. I don't really read much spy literature, but this certainly had me engaged. I finished it in like 2 days. And then a few weeks later, the author himself dies. So
you jinxed him.
No, yeah, I know.
I'm not gonna put that
on you. No, I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, is there any living author who I want dead right now? Should I read one of their books?
But all right, and then before we conclude, I also just want to throw out.
Wait, Jake, did you read anything?
Oh,
yeah, I almost forgot about me. So I will admit, as a social studies teacher, 80% of the things I read is either current events or history related. So I'm always reading either like articles from like this week, or I'm looking at books about past events. Like I'm actually looking at getting a book about Pol Pot because I don't really know much about the Khmer Rouge and everything that happened there. Which,
which is it? First, They Took My Father.
Not that one, but I've seen that one online.
That might be the. If I had to pick a favorite book, I don't know if that would be. It would be in the conversation for sure. Just as far as like, because it's. I'm a sucker for like true stories. I like history stuff too, and so like that's like an actual events that happened during Pol Pot's reign. Very, very harrowing. But yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Yeah, like I was doing that. I've been trying to read more cookbooks because I like to cook. It's more of a hobby than like me trying to survive and get fat off of it. And then one, I guess, like apocalyptic, like vendor I've read is Metro 2033. So like there is a video.
My brother's a big fan of those video games.
Yeah. So like it's the video games are based off the books. So being somebody who's played those games, I was curious about the books. So like the gist of it is it takes place in Moscow. So there's 3 books. All of them take place in Moscow, and obviously starting in the year 2033. And pretty much the nukes fell like 10, 15 years prior or so. And pretty much humanity has had to live underground in the Russian metros, which is why it's called Metro. And they have each like metro station is like a different like village or like town, and like they have to kind of try to survive with these mutated creatures and like radiation everywhere. And you kind of read about this guy named Artyom who like leaves his town in order to try to save it from these mutated creatures. And it's really interesting because it not only pulls in this apocalyptic vibe, but there's like groups that are pretty much neo-Nazis. There's groups that are hardcore Soviets, and it really kind of brings in like the conflict of like ideology and like the struggle of humanity as a whole. And I know the video games are more like, you go in there and just shoot and like you want to be the hero and save the day. But the books kind of focus more on that and like, just like the struggle of humanity to try to survive. So I found that very interesting.
All right. Well, before we conclude, I thought I also wanted to see if anyone, since we're a podcast and all, if anyone had any podcasts they started listening to this year. I know this is kind of on a spot, so we didn't, but I can start. This is a pretty basic one, a very, very popular podcast, but I did start watching it this year, and I've gotten kind of hooked. That's Pod Save America. I really like it. It's a podcast by a bunch of former Obama staffers, and it's interesting because they give a kind of look. They get a perspective of what it's of a government insider that you wouldn't get if you're just listening to pundits. And I listen to a lot of pundits, but it's kind of interesting to get that side of the story, which you don't normally hear, about like what it's like to be on like the inside and like the inner workings and kind of, so they just bring a really cool perspective, and so I've been appreciating them.
So like this was more at the very beginning of the year when I was still driving to work. I can't remember the name very well, but essentially it's this guy who kind of takes out like rap albums from like Kendrick, Kanye. He takes like some of their most like well-known or more like controversial albums, and kind of goes each episode. He dedicates like 5 or 10 episodes to breaking down the album through the songs, kind of like the messages and the stories. Like for example, he did one on Kendrick Lamar and the Butterfly album he had, which was super like intense, and like there's just like a ton of there was like it was a very intense album for him to make and very controversial. And he kind of intros it by first talking about his previous album and how it kind of brings him through his childhood and everything. Mm. And then he kind of goes through the next couple episodes talking about the deeper messages and meanings of some of the more like important songs throughout the album. And he does it with Kendrick, he does it with Kanye, and he does it with a lot of other, like more of the, not like the mainstream rappers, but like the more like influential, like
the ones with things to say in the lyrics.
Yeah, like Kanye, like a lot of people do not realize just how like jam-packed Kanye's like albums and like his music in general is, and like how many themes and like symbols and like the overall messages he has in there. Like, I personally didn't until I listened to him break down one of Kanye's albums, and I was kind of like blown away.
And just for the record, in case it sounded like I was like, you know, kind of put down the non-lyrical rappers. I love non-lyrical rappers. Okay, like I was all on the SoundCloud thing. You know, I even like Lil Pump. You know, shoot me. But so that was not a dig in any way. But it just probably wouldn't be super interesting to have a lyrical analysis of Gucci Gang. So that's all I was saying there.
All right. So this year, when around the end of summer, I was heavily interested in horror as a genre, and I went and found a horror podcast called Knife Point Horror, and it is essentially it's a story podcast. There's not even really a preamble to their podcasts. They just go from you play the episode and it starts telling the story, and it's always kind of like these like low voiced kind of sleepy sounding guys telling a scary story. And if you are the type who can be scared from like just the written text or spoken text, these stories are really, really scary. A lot of them are. A lot of them are completely unforgettable, just the impact that they have. It's just the podcast is just filled with so many creative ways to create kind of a sense of dread, ways that like you don't really see in like horror movies, I feel like often. So yeah, it's a really stunning podcast. I highly recommend it.
What's it called again?
Knife Point Horror.
Cool. I don't listen to podcasts that often. When I occasionally do, it's usually about movies, but all those other movie podcasts suck. We're the only good ones, so I'm not even going to name them.
Oh, fair
yeah,
enough.
fantastic podcast came out this year, actually, called Amateur Theory.
Best podcast that came out this year, for sure. If you're a first-time listener, we've got episodes that go back months now. We've been here forever. Almost. Not a little over
we're the
half a
only
year.
podcast. We invented this. Everything else is.
All right. Well, on that note, tune in next week. We're going to talk about. It's going to be a double movie episode. We're going to talk about the new Wonder Woman and Soul, both getting a Christmas release. We're not going to get the podcast on Christmas because we will be celebrating with our families. But besides that, we will get it out to you soon. So tune in for that next week. And please love us, give us a like, please give us a subscribe, give us a follow, and until next time.
Ta-ta.